So today we're going to be talking about the one and only Brodie Smith. Obviously, there are a ton of viewpoints and a ton of opinions on him. I know it's probably not helpful to talk about him a little bit more than people already do, but I wanted to give my spin and why I feel the way I do. And something that kind of made me look at this situation a little bit more was, don't want to name names, but it has bothered me a little bit, and I think it's important to share not just this player, but people in the industry. And that was Tristan Tanner. Latitude 64 released a couple new discs, The Rive and something else, I can't remember. But in his promo video for the disc, he didn't talk as a person sponsored by Latitude. It was more of just some random person advertising the product. And because of that, he made claims that you just aren't really allowed to make. And I know it was like a lighthearted video, but I think that's one thing that disc golf gets a little bit wrong, is just making everything a little bit informal and describing things in a way that it's not really true to the sport. Like, this sport is honestly a serious sport with lots of money involved. And if you treat it as a casual thing, then that kind of leaves out a little bit of the realism of the sport. And so by that, I mean, in his video, he was claiming, oh, this is the best disc. All levels are going to be doing great with this. It is flying so straight, so nice. And I recommend everybody get this disc. And that is just something that I think is just not good for the sport. We need honesty throughout all levels. If you are sponsored by Innova, Latitude, all the major brands, you have to recognize that your voice carries weight. And I think that is something that gets a little bit lost in the weeds when people kind of think of themselves as just social media icons in a way, where they're trying to promote themselves. And by doing that, they kind of lose a little bit of the truth. And I think that's super important that we keep holding on to that. Because if you are Tristan, if you are Brodie, you are an unbiased source. You do not have a clear lens to be looking through. Drew Gibson does whatever he wants because he's not sponsored, and he has deliberately decided, hey, I don't really want to choose a disc brand right now. I'm doing pretty well on my own, and I think that's best if I just fly whatever I want. And I totally respect that. But he's the only one in the sport right now that can really have an unbiased view of a disc. Something that I noticed was done really well was Simon & Eagle's signature disc. They weren't trying to disguise that, like, Eagles disc was just an FD3. They were like, yeah, it's an FD3, but it has this awesome graphic. It has a little bit modified plastic, but for the most part, it's going to fly the same as an FD3. Like, they weren't trying to hide that. They were just trying to throw it in a video and show why it's awesome. When you disguise the truth in a way that's just kind of dishonest to the viewers, that really does a disservice to the whole industry. And I haven't watched enough of Tristan's videos to really get that feel, but I have seen enough of Brodie's to get the feel that he's not totally honest. And if he is being honest, it's in a kind of braggadocious way that is not fully, it's not endearing. It's not really interesting. It's kind of just talking about how awesome he is. He can shoot 95% in 25-foot range. He's just great, but that's not even 1,000 rated. And I think he just has so much confidence from being a successful YouTuber that he just assumes that confidence will translate to the tournaments and will translate to his voice in the sport. And I know that he has connections to Paul Macbeth and tons of other players, and like, that's dope. He's such a big pull for the social media for disc golf that I love that ability to drive people to the sport. That's dope. But if you're going to talk about all these changes that you want to be made to the sport, you have to recognize that you are unbiased. You do not have a clear view in this sport. When you say that companies like Jomez should stop doing coverage, you have to realize that 90% of the people that started the sport in the past 2 years know of Jomez and know of the coverage and prefer that coverage stay because they're in love with all of the uploads that they've done. And I myself is a prime example of like a person that totally converted from just a random guy that goes on hikes to a random guy that goes on hikes and plays disc golf while he's hiking. And that was solely because of Jomez and the amount of work that they've done to the sport. So I think it's pretty dishonest to paint the light that Jomez is not doing a whole lot for the industry. I think it's doing a ton. Could they do a little bit more for the players that get on the lead cards? Probably, yeah. But I think that live coverage is just not at a place where it's interesting. So many people have talked about the live streams being buggy, being not the shots they want to see, being you have to pay for live coverage. Like, are you serious? And for a sport that's trying so hard to gain momentum, I just don't see pay for live coverage as being a successful plan. And that's kind of just one view out of many that I've noticed that I heavily do not align with, and I don't think the community does either, which is why I tend to think that Brodie's not necessarily talking about what is best for the sport. He's really just trying to drum up controversy and trying to maintain his relevancy in the YouTube industry. And he has done amazing for that sport. He has maintained top-notch views for disc golf. There are nearly nobody, not even Paul, has anywhere close to the numbers that Brodie has. But I think because he's figured out the trend of controversy speaks and controversy will give you views, he will maintain that disillusion that this is the best for the sport, even if it's not. I think he has just so much confidence and so much say that he will talk to anybody that he can that is on the tour or works on the tour to change things, when in all reality, he doesn't know as much as he thinks he knows. And I think it's important that we take to concern that his voice has been based on tons of viewership and tons of clickbait and tons of topics that generate talk about him. And we have to realize that you can't be a good source if your views align with what is trending on the YouTube algorithm. Like, that's just not right. So that's been my main concern with Brodie. Does he make cool scoobers? Yeah, he's a pretty good scuba player. I won't deny that. And honestly, he's probably a good player too. He probably will make the tour and be a great player, and he's going to be potentially top 10 in some tournaments. Like, that's sad to say, because I really dislike that he is so braggadocious. But he probably will do that. But with that said, I think he does have to maintain a little bit of down-to-earthness that he is not currently doing. And that is what I think about him, and I think that he could change it, but I don't foresee that happening. And now we can look at issues, like as of a couple days ago. So I watched a video by Iceberg TV. Still not a huge player in the scene, but yeah, it was mentioned by Eagle McMahon, which is dope. Nice to see that Eagle actually watches the YouTube scene. But Brodie was copyright claiming his videos, and like, it wasn't a fair claim, and it's just not a good look to be copyright claiming videos. Like, obviously Iceberg TV isn't the biggest one, but he's just trying to make good videos and trying to do his best. So I think it's just super not productive to be copyright claiming the community's videos. Like, there's just better things to do and better ways to go about making impact on the scene. And I watched a little bit smaller YouTuber, JK Disc Golf, and I really like him. I think he has great videos, and he talks about general disc golf topics in a really fun way. And he posted a video about a conversation that Brodie and him had in a live stream. And I think it illustrates a pretty good explanation of another reason why Brodie's just not the best for the sport. And that was, for the most part, when they were talking, it was more of just trying to dig at all of the controversies and dig at all of the reasons why Brodie's wrong, and trying to just stir up drama, because that's kind of what wins in YouTube. And that's not a great way to look at the sport or YouTube. It's not honest, and it doesn't really exhibit great things for any meaningful discussion. So that was just another example of him just kind of being argumentative for the sake of it. Even if he fully believes his stances, it kind of just doesn't really seem to matter because he will most likely just disagree with your opinion. And if he does agree, he'll still try to kind of straw man and try to argue a different point that you made. And overall, I mean, it is hard to argue, though, that his numbers have not driven the sport a little bit. And by a little bit, I mean at least probably 10,000 players have started because of his channel. And podcast, the Upshot, a great podcast, by the way, they talked to Brodie, and he mentions that disc golf should mimic most professional sports. And I think he really gets wrong this aspect of the sport because, like, to me, I feel like disc golf is so very good because it is not like any other sport. There is no paid coverage. Well, there's paid coverage, but you don't have to pay if you want to watch. There is so much amounts of originality, and people watching on YouTube love the coverage. And to say that the sport should change to fit a more modified version that mimics ESPN or just NFL coverage is just kind of stupid. It doesn't really reflect what the sport is actually like. It is a little bit like the odd man out. This sport is not like others, and I love it because of that. There's so much originality that is brought to the sport and so many awesome things that you just don't get with an NBC coverage. And if we tried to mimic other sports, we'd lose out on so much feel and so much personality. And I think that's part of the reason why I just really hate the live coverage. They cover the sport in a way that just doesn't match me and a lot of other people's view of the sport. Like, yeah, we care about cool shots and we care about who wins, but honestly, we just like the people and we love watching disc golf. Like, it doesn't really matter that much who wins. The drama is kind of manufactured, mostly for live. Like on a Joe Mez coverage and Central Coast, the winner of the tournament, like it's part of the video, but honestly, me and probably most people watching, they don't really care who wins. Like, awesome. Paul got a win. Kevin got a win. Like, these are people that I care about a lot, and I'm glad they're doing well. But when I'm watching the video, I just generally don't care about the drama. And I think that's important to note, that is a big reason why I think disc golf is just not like any other sport. Like, golf probably has similar notions a little bit, but still, golf is so much more of like a limited sport. Like, you have to pay to play. In disc golf, there's no payment. If you want to just play around anywhere, you just do it. Like, tournaments, I assume, are way cheaper. I haven't really checked a golf tournament because I would never go. But I think everything about the sport lends itself to just being so widely available and so freeing. And once you start putting on restrictions to network coverage or any 10, 15 cam coverage of the sport, you kind of lose out on that feel. I love when Joe Mez or Central Coast is like, yeah, we didn't really have like a cameraman for this hole because we were shooting like the B angle of another shot, and we didn't expect freaking let's see, probably Ricky or Kevin to shoot a insane hyzer or grenade shot, and we just didn't get the angle. Like, I love that. That's so endearing. And it's another reason that kind of proves my point that we just generally don't care about the drama. We just like seeing cool shots. And I think that's important to note, that the sport is not taken as seriously as most other sports are. And that's a great thing about it. I think that's something that we really have to look at more. And if you look at Simon Lizotte, he is not going to do that. He doesn't take the sport that seriously, and he's having a great time doing it. Maybe not this season, but in previous seasons, when he's doing great, he's a little bit more focused and a little bit less fun to be around. But when he's having great rounds and when he's making insane shots, he's the best guy to watch out of anybody in the entire card, anybody in the entire field. Maybe not because he's playing the best, but just because he's doing cool stuff, and that's what we like to see. And it's not a trick shot. It's not like something that you can't do. It's just a cool shot that he probably practices a lot, and so it turns out to be pretty useful in a tournament sometimes. And so I think when we look at the overall view of Brodie, we have to realize that he is motivated by views and maybe not money. He's probably doing pretty well right now. He's probably not motivated by money, but he is motivated by driving viewer retention, all of like the analytics that he's maximized over the years for YouTube. He knows how to like manipulate certain things to be his way. And that's not to say that he's like some horrible guy, but he does live and make his income off views. And so he's tend to do it based on drama. And I just think that's probably not the best thing for the sport. So with that, that is my coverage on the one and only Brodie Smith.